Good afternoon. I'm Senate President Pro Tem Becca Balint. For nearly 2 years now, Vermonters have been working so hard to hold their lives together. I've seen incredible resilience among my neighbors and constituents. I've watched thousands of Vermonters step up to pitch in and help their communities. Frontline workers continue to keep our state running day after day. Teachers, healthcare workers, public employees, retail and hospitality workers, and all the small businesses and nonprofits that have kept serving and supporting Vermonters throughout this ongoing emergency. Despite the scourge of the pandemic, we have food on our tables, we have medicine in our cabinets, and our children are getting an education because of your dedication to your neighbors. Thank you for all you've done to hold us all together. Shortly before Christmas, a family member of mine had a health emergency that required an ambulance run and a trip to the hospital. What a tremendous relief we all felt when she got the excellent medical care she needed. All too often, we take these things for granted. We don't stop enough to think of the people who make these systems of care run. These critical systems are made up of dedicated professionals, Vermonters, who fill vital jobs, but also have a calling to serve their communities. And we're so fortunate that they do answer this call to service. As legislators, we also have a part in making sure that these systems keep running. Along with the executive and judicial branches, our citizen legislature serves Vermonters. The three branches of government are designed to be co-equal so we can act together as a system of checks and balances. Your legislature is not made of professional politicians. We're your neighbors. We're citizens who run for office because we care deeply about our communities, our state, its people, and its land. We're former teachers, we're business owners, retail workers, chefs, social workers, medical workers, attorneys, and retirees. We come from all walks of life. We bring our family histories with us and our experiences, and we also carry with us the stories of our constituents from all of our villages, towns, and cities. And we try our level best to do right by the people back home. That means working hard on behalf of all of you, listening deeply to your experiences, fighting for what is best for our constituents, and knowing that we need to work with the other branches to do our best work. The legislative session opened yesterday, and the governor's State of the State today is the beginning of our shared work. It is the start of a complex conversation between the executive branch and the legislative branch, a conversation that will carry on throughout the session in hours of committee hearings and discussions with our constituents and with members of the government. This is the third legislative session in which the pandemic is swirling around us. And I know I speak for so many Vermonters when I say, I thought we'd all be at the end of the emergency by now. But yesterday was another record-breaking day of infections, and we are not at all through the crisis. We have to continue working together to fight the pandemic and support a strong recovery. We must prioritize Vermonters' health and well-being and support all the working families who are having such a tough time right now. The core of the Senate's agenda this session will be about supporting Vermonters and their families. And my top priority will be wisely investing the millions and millions of federal rescue plan dollars to improve the lives of Vermonters and their families. And I agree with the governor that workforce is a central issue, and it's one part of a series of interconnected challenges facing all of us. We need real and sizable investments and much needed policy support in a bunch of areas. We have to address the housing crisis. We have to continue investing in broadband and childcare. We have to protect our climate and our planet. We have to push for more accountability in our criminal justice system. And we have to continue to support our teachers, public employees, and make sure their pensions are protected for the future. We began critical work in these areas last session, and we must continue. The investments we make now must address both the immediate needs of Vermonters, those needs that are created by the pandemic and its fallout, but we also have to create opportunities for Vermonters going forward so that they can come out of this emergency thriving. One of my biggest priorities this session will be addressing Vermont's major housing crisis. Vermonters across the state struggle with housing costs, accessibility, and stability. Businesses can't recruit employees, workers can't fill jobs, and individuals and families suffer when they don't have housing. As the governor said, and I agree, housing policy is workforce policy. In the fall and early winter, the speaker and I held listening sessions around the state. The Investing in Vermont's Future Tour was an engagement process that enabled us to listen to other policy tools as well. I look forward to tackling the safety and the availability of rentals, the continuing development of downtowns and villages, and the pathways to home ownership for more Vermonters. We heard a lot this afternoon about the workforce shortage that greatly impacts businesses and families across the state. This is affecting every single sector of the economy, and it is being felt not just in Vermont, but across the country. What I've been hearing from Vermonters is that it's particularly difficult among the caring professionals, those professionals that keep our families and communities running: nurses, childcare professionals, educators, mental health workers, and professionals who support Vermonters with physical, cognitive, or behavioral challenges. We also see sizable shortages in the hospitality sectors and in the trades. So we have to continue to invest in higher education, training, and development for key professions, and work to identify new tools to help businesses recruit and retain employees. But we also know this is a time for our education and training systems to be reimagined. We can break down the siloed thinking that says we should have two systems, one for the trades and one for academics. We must have a technologically fluent and adaptable workforce coming out of our K-12 system, whether they also master a traditional trade or an emerging technology like electronic aviation, or whether they choose to pursue a post-secondary degree. Because of the federal funding available to us, we now have resources to make systemic changes, while also making strategic short-term impacts in critical areas. This is an all hands on deck moment, and we welcome ideas from all partners in Vermont's economy. And we know that we must address Vermonters' concern about affording high energy bills and about what kind of planet our children will inherit. The immediate recommendations of the Vermont Climate Council offer an opportunity to address both issues simultaneously by investing a lot more money in the weatherization of homes, energy efficiency, and electrification. We must keep people and the planet at the center of what we do. We must lower costs for families and reduce dangerous emissions. Both are true. And this work must be rooted in environmental justice. We have to ensure that those most impacted by global warming and environmental degradation are helped, truly helped, by our solutions. The Senate will also make meaningful action on racial justice by working to make sure that all Vermonters get their day in court and have access to judicial oversight if they're abused. The systems of justice we create and support must be accountable to all Vermonters. Other important issues we'll work on will be continuing to seek a shared solution that makes sure that we have a sustainable pension system for our teachers and state employees. And we must keep pushing for a secure retirement plan for all Vermonters so that every citizen has a safety net when they retire. We'll also be setting up a bipartisan, fair redistricting process that strengthens Vermonters' trust in our democracy. And the legislature will finish our efforts to protect reproductive liberty in our state's constitution and then send the issue out to the voters. This session, the Senate will work hard to deliver meaningful results for the working families that we all represent. We want to make sure all Vermonters see their lives supported by our work. As pro tem, I will work with my colleagues to make sure that we all stay focused day after day on how to make important investments for the people of our state. We'll work in partnership with the House and with the governor and get to work on behalf of all of you. We will easily agree on some policy goals, and we'll have more contentious conversations about others. I'm sure on some issues we'll agree on the end goal, but may not think the same way about how to get there. As I said a year ago, that's all part of the lively, robust conversation that happens in a healthy democracy. And here in Vermont, we still have that healthy democracy. We can continue to show the nation and those who seek to undermine our ideals that our legislative work is done for the people, not for sound bites or ego or petty victories that come from demonizing each other. Each day of this legislative session, through our shared work, we will, if we do it right, rebuild and sustain trust in our Green Mountain State's hallowed democracy and make meaningful change for the people of Vermont. And now it's my honor to introduce Speaker of the House, Jill Krowinski.
Thank you, Senator Balint. Good afternoon. I'm Jill Krowinski. I'm the Speaker of the Vermont House of Representatives. Almost exactly 1 year ago, as we started the new year and the Vermont legislature was starting our legislative work, we watched in horror as a violent insurgency took place at our nation's capital. It was a shocking attack on our democracy, and the ripple effects of the insurrection continue today as people question the election results and prepare to campaign against the validity of future elections. It was in stark contrast to the work that was set to take place in Montpelier, and that can be reflected in the condemnation of the attack by all parties. Vermonters saw it for what it was, an attempt to dismantle the very fabric of our democracy. It made me proud that we rallied together in that moment, but there is much work to do in order to heal our state, our nation, and chart a successful path into the future. While many things have changed in the past year, there are still many sad similarities that remain. The virus is surging across all 50 states, and partisan politics have retained their grip on our nation's capital, with deadlock as the de facto state of affairs in Washington, D.C. We are fortunate to have a wonderful congressional delegation, and I thank them for all their continuous work to support Vermonters during this difficult time. While Vermont has been successful in working together and making sacrifices to protect our communities and get things done, in recent weeks, the pandemic has been surging in the state with record case counts and hospitalization rates. We see our healthcare workers, teachers, emergency responders, parents, caregivers, and neighbors continue to step up and do everything they can to hold it all together. I can't thank you all enough for your efforts. I know you are all exhausted, and my hope and our mission is for the legislature to act quickly and thoughtfully to provide relief across Vermont. We will not let the pandemic deter us. We are taking on the important work that Vermonters are counting on to build a more resilient and equitable communities across the state. We have many lessons learned from the pandemic, including the way that we have responded together. We have a lot to reflect on and to be proud of. This has been an incredibly difficult time in our nation's history, but I do believe we can come out of this united, more united and stronger than ever. We must remember and act on all of the things that we've learned during this time. And we must persevere to recover together and to create a Vermont that works for everyone. So what does that mean? That means we need to chart the course into a future that is more stable and equitable for all Vermonters. I agree with the governor that we have made headway in recent years, including the legislature making historic investments just this past year. We stabilized our state college system with the largest investment in higher education in state history. We made a $190 million investment in housing, $120 million to continue our work to clean our Vermont waterways, $150 million in broadband development to close our digital divide, and nearly $160 million pumped into communities, workforce, and our economy. Those are just a few of the investments we made that will impact the future for all our fellow Vermonters, and we know that there is still much more to do. When we talk about recovering our economy, we must first address the social fabric of our society. There are systems of injustice that persist, and there are gaps in support systems in our communities. We must address these systemic gaps to give all Vermonters, every single one of us, an equal shot at a good life. Last year, we made progress in addressing these gaps by passing legislation ensuring healthcare coverage for all children and pregnant individuals, regardless of their immigration status. We made significant investments in our childcare system, pushing us closer to childcare that is affordable and more accessible to working Vermont families. And there was our community schools pilot to help kids and families access vital services such as healthcare, mental health counseling, or help with food or housing. In times of crisis, Vermonters are known for our ability to rally together, and we have to make that our status quo each and every day. In speaking with Vermonters this summer and fall, I heard wonderful signs of progress. One person said, telehealth has been transformative. We've been able to access a lot of services and connect to other people who can support us. Another person said, I've been so impressed with how hard everyone is working in state government, the nonprofit sector, everywhere. Everyone is doing their best to help each other, help their neighbors. There is a degree of kindness that underlies everything. However, there were also some deeply concerning and troubling stories, such as this one. We're recruiting at all levels of staff, and yet we have a 40% vacancy right now. Our clients are struggling with minimal support and our staff are stretched thin and overworked, but we can't recruit people, can't pay them enough, and can't find housing for them. Another story was, there is no childcare available in my community or in surrounding communities. I have to drive my children to the closest place I could get access to, and it is 50 miles each way. This is unsustainable and disruptive, but I have no other option if I want to keep working. There is so much to take on, and I look forward to tackling the interconnected strategies of housing, childcare, and workforce, and developing and advancing strategies to combat climate change that sets a foundation to building a resilient future, while working to ensure the legislation that passes creates greater equity for all Vermonters. These issues are all intertwined, and I have asked House committees to avoid tackling these issues in silos. Instead, we'll look at how these overarching challenges, like workforce, interact with policy areas both in and across communities and committees. Senator Balint and I met with Vermonters throughout the summer and fall to discuss the future of Vermont. We asked people three basic questions. What's going well? What challenges are you facing? And what investments could have the greatest impact on your community and or Vermont? These conversations with Vermonters from all across the 14 counties were truly informative. Individuals shared their stories, their life experiences, and hope for the future of Vermont. There are clearly success stories for us to build on, but we also heard plenty of challenges occurring in our communities that cannot be left unaddressed if we are to build a state that is welcoming for all people to live and to visit. At a high level, many Vermonters agreed that strategies to combat climate change and transition to a sustainable way of life were important, as were continued investments in higher education and workforce development, supporting working families through affordable housing, a child tax credit, rural broadband build-out, and affordable high-quality child care. Also increasing access to health care, mental health, and substance use disorder treatment services. also dismantling systemic and institutional racism and advancing racial and social equity to make more welcoming communities. This is just a snapshot of the things that we heard. And I know Senator Balint shares my enthusiasm for continuing these conversations to make sure that we can be successful in supporting all Vermont communities. The pandemic has taken a toll on all of us, and I know Vermonters are exhausted and looking for support in their day-to-day lives. We have lost 482 Vermonters to COVID-19. Countless others are facing the long-term impacts from contracting the virus, and disruptions continue for everyone, everywhere. It is imperative that we take on this legislative session with our fellow Vermonters in mind, and I know that the legislature can and we will find collaborative solutions to support our families, friends, neighbors as they continue to support each other through this phase of the pandemic. Lastly, I'll say that we are all working hard together, and this is our time and our moment to make Vermont an even better place for our working families, small business, and communities. Thank you, be well, and stay safe.